Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking the express lane, really, into the future of global security.
We are.
And it's a future that looks, well, less like a high-walled military base and a lot more like a competitive global marketplace.
That's a great way to put it. We're unpacking a really revolutionary proposal today. It challenges one of the most foundational assumptions of military intelligence.
Which is?
The assumption that a government has to own and operate and maintain every single sensor, every data lake, every single tool it needs to, fight a global conflict.
Okay, let's just dive right into that, because the core conflict here, the thing driving this whole shift, it's just brutal.
It is.
It's the speed of commercial innovation versus the, let's be honest, glacial pace of government security protocol.
Necessary, but slow.
So slow.
Yeah.
And if your classified environment is actually preventing you from using cutting-edge AI and data analytics, well, that environment suddenly becomes a strategic liability.
A huge one. The cutting edge isn't owned by a central intelligence agency anymore.
No. It's owned by venture-backed startups in places like Helsinki or Tokyo or Canberra.
And that reality, that simple fact, it necessitates a complete overhaul of the whole intelligence process. The proposal introduces this concept of a commercial targetry marketplace. And this is a complete paradigm shift in what's called PED processing, exploitation, and dissemination.
So instead of the government generating every piece of raw data.
Exactly. Instead of that, private entities, we're talking major international allied tech companies, they're the ones tasked with maintaining continuous global data on entities during peacetime.
Which means when a conflict or a crisis suddenly erupts, the government isn't starting from zero.
Not at all.
They just purchase validated, pre-vetted target packages from these companies.
Through secure, standardized APIs, it sounds like buying intelligence right off the shelf ready to go.
And that is the mission for our deep dive today. We want to understand the mechanics of this marketplace, who the key players are, and crucially, how this pretty audacious plan addresses the massive ethical and legal questions that come with commercializing the kill chain.
And to really get the scope of this, you have to frame the strategic need. This isn't about convenience or just saving money.
Right.
It's driven by critical failings in the current system. The sources we're looking at point to two massive deficits that this marketplace is explicitly designed to fix.
Now those are?
Technological lag and the integration deficit.
Okay, technological lag is probably the easier one to picture. When you insist that everything has to be kept in these highly classified, closed-off environments.
Often behind air-gapped systems designed decades ago.
Exactly. You are fundamentally stopping yourself from using modern data lakes, complex AI, all the things the private sector iterates on, every 6 months?
If that. You're basically forcing your analysts to fight a 21st century information war with 20th century IT.
And that lag creates a massive vulnerability.
A critical one. While the commercial world is leveraging petabytes of global data and training new models instantly, military systems are struggling just to handle the volume and the variety of data you need for global surveillance.
And that's connected to the second point, the integration deficit.
Precisely. Commercial ecosystems, by their very design, they thrive on seamless integration across platforms. Think of any big tech company. One service talks to dozens of others instantly.
Whereas military systems are often stovepiped.
Exactly. One intelligence platform can't easily share data with another. That leads to these painfully slow decision cycles. We're talking hours, when it really should be minutes.
And what I find so fascinating here, and what I think makes this idea so resilient, is that this isn't just a U.S.-centric fix for a U.S. problem.
Not at all.
The solution is built on leveraging the sovereign industrial capabilities of key allies. It's about building this resilient, globally distributed network.
Yes. We're talking about drawing on the industrial and tech power of Europe, of Japan, South Korea, the Oceania nations.
Creating a kind of collective, allied, digital kill chain that's much, much harder to disrupt.
That shared burden, that distributed capability, that's the absolute foundation of the resilience model. By design, it moves way beyond a dependency on just U.S. assets.
It uses global industrial power to create a competitive system.
A system that is inherently diversified and, crucially, very difficult for a single adversary to just neutralize with a localized countermeasure or a specific cyber attack.
So if the goal is to beat that lag and fix the integration problem, we need to understand where the current model is feeling most dramatically right now. Let's get into segment 1 and really detail that strategic problem. Scale and distance.
The central issue, the problem that current government systems just cannot solve is persistent surveillance on a global scale.
Okay.
Modern strategic needs, especially when you're dealing with these huge operational theaters like the Indo-Pacific, they demand continuous high-fidelity tracking of potential threats. And that's across every domain: air, sea, land, cyber.
The sheer volume of surveillance required is just staggering.
It's unbelievable.
And that brings us to what's often called the tyranny of distance.
A perfect phrase for it.
When you look at the Indo-Pacific, and that's the focus of so much of this proposal, the distances are just immense. We're talking about vast oceans, thousands of islands, huge, often totally unmonitored coastlines.
And trying to use traditional government assets, high-cost naval ships, expensive patrol aircraft, or these dedicated classified satellites to keep a constant watch on that entire area.
It's just cost prohibitive. For any single nation or even a tight coalition of nations under the current model, it's basically impossible.
And that results in critical gaps in coverage.
And adversaries know this.
They understand these gaps perfectly. They use them to move their sensitive assets, mobile missile launchers, logistics, dark vessels, knowing they have these windows of time where nobody is watching.
Right.
So the sources we're looking at, they argue, and pretty emphatically, that commercial satellite constellations and these global sensor networks are the only scalable solution for what they call peacetime vigilance.
Only private industry, driven by venture capital and the race for market share, has invested enough in the sheer number of satellites and ground stations to actually watch the globe continuously.
Exactly.
So the foundation of this whole solution isn't about wartime action, not yet. It's all laid out in what they call Phase 0, continuous commercial surveillance.
That is the essential starting point. Phase 0 is all about establishing this continuous, ubiquitous surveillance. It uses a multi-domain sensor mesh that is provided entirely by existing allied corporations.
Spanning continents, from North America to Asia to Europe.
It's the peacetime data collection phase. This is where the massive data lake is constantly being filled, enriched, validated, and fused. It's just waiting for the government's demand signal for an actionable target package.
A perpetual state of readiness, but it's outsourced to the private sector.
That's the core idea.
This shift from government ownership of data to government access to private data, that feels key. And it leads us right into the details. Who are these allied companies, and what are the specific cutting-edge commercial sensors they're bringing to the table? Okay, let's dive deep into segment 2, the global commercial sensor mesh, and we'll focus on the physical domain first. The white paper makes a really strong case that commercial constellations are now offering sensing capabilities that, until very recently, were totally restricted to highly classified government platforms.
Absolutely. The technological democratization is, for all intents and purposes, complete. We're seeing just incredible sophistication in these allied, commercially owned satellites.
And where do we start?
We have to start with synthetic aperture radar, or SAR.
Okay.
This technology is just invaluable because it's active sensing. It sends out its own microwave pulses, which means it can see right through clouds, smoke, even camouflage, and it works perfectly day or night.
It completely removes the weather dependence that can cripple a traditional optical satellite.
Totally. And the allied capacity here is extremely spread out. Japan, specifically, is presented as a major force multiplier in the Pacific.
There are two companies primarily, IQPS and Synspective.
Right. IQPS, their specialty is extremely lightweight, high-resolution satellites. They're designed for rapid revisit times.
So agility.
All about agility. If military analysts need fresh imagery on a specific spot, say, they're monitoring a factory for unusual nighttime activity or tracking vehicles moving out of a hidden base, IQPS gives you that high-frequency refresh rate. And that's absolutely essential for tracking mobile targets.
And Synspective.
Yeah.
Their capability goes way beyond just taking a high-res picture. They specialize in something called interferometry.
This is where the technical analysis gets intensely precise. Interferometry uses these really sophisticated algorithms to compare overlapping SAR images that were taken at slightly different times, from slightly different orbital angles.
Okay.
And by measuring the minute phase shifts in the radar signal that comes back, the system can detect subtle changes in elevation, down to the sub-centimeter or even millimeter level. It's invaluable for targetry.
Hold on. Why is millimeter level change detection so important for military intelligence? What does that tell you?
It tells you about activities happening below the surface, or subtle infrastructure changes that camouflage might hide from a normal camera.
I see.
Analysts can use interferometry to monitor things like ground subsidence, which could indicate underground bunker construction, or subtle changes in an airstrip's elevation, which might show new expansion or heavy reinforcement. You're not just looking at the surface, you're measuring how the Earth itself is being manipulated by the adversary.
That is just its next level passive monitoring.
Yeah.
The Earth is basically acting as the detector.
In a way, yes.
And while Japan provides that density and precision for the Indo-Pacific, the European theater coverage is secured by Finland's ICEY.
And ICEY's contribution is crucial for the whole global nature of this mesh. They ensure you have persistent, high-fidelity, day and night SAR monitoring across critical areas in Europe. They maintain the same standard of fidelity that you see in the Pacific.
So there's redundancy. A regional crisis is covered by dedicated, allied, and commercially competitive assets.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move to traditional imaging. Electro-optical, or EO, and infrared IR. South Korea's Hanwha Systems gets a specific mention here for its focused regional capability.
Hanwha Systems has invested a huge amount in deploying what they call hyper-connected satellite payloads with world-class IR capabilities. And the white paper highlights that their sensors are specifically tuned and optimized for monitoring the unique atmospheric and terrain features of the Korean peninsula and the broader Asian landmass.
So it's a deep, tailored intelligence capacity built right into a commercial product.
It is, and it reduces the reliance on more generic U.S. or European assets for that absolutely critical theater.
And of course, you need the reference map, the foundational global base map against which all these other, high revisit SAR and IR detections are measured.
And that comes from the giants, Maxar and Planet from the U.S. and Airbus from France. They provide the global high-fidelity reference image that serves as the baseline for all of the analysis.
Okay, that covers the space domain pretty extensively. But as we discussed, that tyranny of distance is felt most acutely in the maritime domain, especially tracking things across the Pacific. You need tech that can scan huge ocean areas efficiently and autonomously.
You do.
And this is where Australia comes into the conversation with a company called Sentient Vision Systems, which is now part of Shield AI. They developed VIDAR visual detection and ranging.
VIDAR is revolutionary. It's essentially an optical radar, but it's tailored for maritime patrol.
How does it work?
It uses these specialized high-resolution cameras that are mounted on aerial platforms, often drones or surveillance aircraft, to continuously scan huge swaths of the ocean surface at high speed. The algorithms are designed to filter out all the noise waves, sun glare, whitecaps, and automatically flag any tiny anomaly that looks like a small boat or a submarine periscope or even a raft.
That has to be astronomically faster than a human operator just staring at a screen.
It's exponentially faster and much more accurate over long periods. When you're patrolling thousands of square miles of ocean, VIDAR provides that essential first pass. It dramatically cuts down the search time needed to find these high-value, small or low-signature targets.
Which is absolutely essential for sustained monitoring in the Pacific.
Absolutely.
And finally, not every vessel out there is using a transponder. France, through a company called Unseen Labs, specifically targets the ships that are trying to go dark.
Unseen Labs operates a constellation that's designed purely for mapping the electronic order of battle, or EOB, at sea.
Okay.
They intercept and locate specific radio frequency, or RF, signals. We're not talking about communications, but things like radar or navigation systems.
The signals emitted by vessels that may have turned off their standard tracking systems like AI.
Exactly. And by using orbital mechanics and signal analysis, they can persistently track and identify potential adversary ships that are trying to cross oceans without being detected. This gives the whole allied coalition a complete picture of maritime movement, even from those who are actively trying to hide.
And here's where it gets, for me, really interesting. In segment 3, we move beyond the traditional physical sensing, the imaging, the radar, the RF, and we start to capture the digital exhaust of an adversary. It's about leveraging their online digital footprint and combining it with all that physical sensor data we just discussed to understand intent and logistics.
The digital domain is the modern front line for intelligence gathering. Every person, every institution, even an adversary trying to operate covertly leaves a massive trail of data across the internet.
And the ability to collect that, structure it, and analyze it in phase 0 is critical for predictive intelligence.
Absolutely critical.
And the source material cites Australia's Fivecast as the trusted leader in AI-enabled OSINT open source intelligence for the Five Eyes community.
Fivecast's platform is designed to ingest and analyze massive amounts of unstructured data from the surface web, the deep web, and even the dark web, all at the same time. They use machine learning to bring structure to all that chaos.
And the key application here is predictive.
It is. The system is used to identify high-risk entities and, critically, to map an adversary's social networks, their communications, their logistical planning, before any kinetic conflict even begins.
So you can look for patterns of conversation or financial transactions or the sudden movement of key people that might suggest mobilization or a shift in intent.
Exactly. You're moving from just tracking an object to understanding the organizational intent behind that object, mapping the human element, the command structure, the intentions, the relationships, long before a target ever shows up on a radar screen is a massive strategic advantage.
But tracking the physical movement of supplies is just as vital, especially in the remote, non-urban parts of the Pacific. This is where IoT and logistics tracking comes in, powered by another Australian company, Myriota.
Myriota provides direct-to-orbit IoT connectivity using these extremely small, low-power transmitters. This technology solves a really fundamental problem.
This is
Tracking logistics in places where there is zero cellular or traditional satellite coverage. These little devices can be attached to shipping containers, fuel drums, generators. The white paper specifically notes its value in monitoring the flow of dual-use goods or fuel supplies to remote Pacific islands, where an adversary's logistics network might be minimal but absolutely essential.
So, okay, we have all these independent allied commercial companies throwing massive amounts of wildly different data into the system. Radar, optical, maritime, RF, digital chatter, logistics, pings, but data by itself is just noise.
Right. It's just noise until it's connected and analyzed.
So data fusion and analytics becomes the absolute core of this entire marketplace concept.
It's the connective tissue. The raw sensor data is the supply, but the fusion platform is what transforms that supply into a cohesive, actionable enemy order of battle, or EOB.
And the key players mentioned for providing this high-level fusion are Palantir from the USA and Hanwha Systems ICT from South Korea.
Their role is to run the highly sophisticated AI algorithms that are needed for correlation. Think about fusing a suspective SAR detection, which just shows some ground disturbance, with unstructured reporting from Fivecast that details a sudden, secretive shipment of specialized concrete to that exact same location.
The fusion platform connects those dots.
It connects the dots and builds the comprehensive intelligence picture.
So instead of an analyst saying, "We see ground movement," the fusion platform says, "We see ground movement at X coordinates," which correlates with online chatter about construction materials, confirming this is likely a new missile shelter facility.
Precisely. It shifts the entire intelligence value proposition. You go from merely knowing where something is to knowing what it is, who is operating it, and critically, what its operational status is. And that validated fused data is what the government then purchases as a target packet.
We've been talking about commercial companies globally, identifying potential targets in real time, T100-47. Now, to a lot of our listeners, that's going to sound like a system that is perfectly optimized to accelerate conflict and maybe even skip necessary checks and balances. So in segment 4, we need to make a necessary pivot here to governance. How do they propose preventing this from becoming a system built for, warmongering?
This is the critical friction point the proposal has to overcome, both legally and ethically. And the white paper stresses that extremely strict ethical and legal standards are required for all vendors, and that these are enforced by technology.
Okay.
The core defense against that warmongering critique is that the system uses AI not to expedite conflict arbitrarily, but to guarantee compliance. The goal is to reduce human error and potential suffering through enforced precision.
So the groundbreaking mechanism they propose is the use of constitutional AI acting as a gatekeeper. That sounds like an immense task to delegate to an AI-defining international humanitarian law compliance for a global kill chain.
It is the most ambitious part of the entire plan. It leverages this novel AI training model that was pioneered by Anthropic.
And the concept is?
The concept is that the AI model isn't just trained through reinforcement learning to achieve a goal, like finding targets. It's trained against a predefined, unchangeable, high-level set of principles. A constitution.
So the AI's primary job isn't target optimization, it's adherence to compliance. How do you actually encode the complexity of international humanitarian law or IHL concepts like proportionality and necessity into a model's constitution?
That is the immense technical and legal challenge. The Constitution includes these explicit rule sets that are derived from the Geneva Conventions and established IHL protocols.
For instance,
The AI is trained on parameters like never recommend a strike where the expected collateral damage outweighs the military advantage. The constitutional AI layer acts like an automated judge advocate general. Before any target packet can be sold, the AI has to review it, specifically checking for red flags related to IHL compliance, proximity to protected sites, or high civilian density.
that immediately brings up huge questions about auditability and verification. If a government is relying on an AI-generated package, how do we know the AI wasn't trained on biased or incomplete legal data, and who's liable if the AI makes a legal error?
That concern is exactly what drives the requirement for transparency in the AI governance model, though the ultimate legal liability would still rest with the government that chooses to, pull the trigger.
But the system is designed to provide an automated, auditable compliance report with every single package.
Yes. And on top of that, you face the issue of legal admissibility and national sovereignty within this allied network.
Meaning, if a U.S.-based AI vets a target, does that interpretation of IHL hold up under, say, Japanese or European law?
Exactly. A common point of friction in military coalitions is always whose legal standard applies. The solution here involves developing sovereign AI models by key partners, and they cite companies like Fujitsu and NEC in Japan.
Yeah.
These sovereign AI models ensure that the data processing and the legal vetting for targets that originate in or pertain to that region adhere strictly to local and sovereign legal interpretations.
That is smart. It prevents the perception that this whole global marketplace is just outsourcing its legal standard to U.S. military norms,
Right.
which in turn builds sovereign trust within the marketplace itself.
It's absolutely necessary for true coalition integration. Furthermore, the system has to navigate these very stringent modern privacy laws. The sources note two key mechanisms for this. First is U.S. person, or USP masking, where any data associated with identifiers from U.S. and Five Eyes nationals is automatically masked and removed from the target analysis pipeline.
So it's effectively protecting domestic data from the targeting systems.
And for Europe, they have to address the highly stringent GDPR requirements. Vendors structure their data processing under the national security exemption of GDPR, which is a key legal carve-out.
Okay.
And crucially, to maintain trust and what's called cloud sovereignty, they use localized data centers. They cite Microsoft's EU data boundary as an example. This means the physical location of the data adheres to regional sovereignty requirements, even though the intelligence product is being processed for an international kill chain.
Trust is built by respecting sovereign borders, both digital and physical.
That's the idea.
Let's move to segment 5, the true mechanics of how this functions as a marketplace. This concept is treating the target as a purchasable, legally validated commodity. How does that transaction, which could lead to lethal action, actually happen?
It's designed to be instantaneous and low friction. It relies heavily on automated API integration, not a human browsing some kind of catalog.
Yep.
You start with the transactional loop. Vendor, let's go back to our Japanese SAR example. Synspective identifies a high-value mobile launcher. This raw data is fused, analyzed, and then run through that constitutional AI filter.
Right.
The resulting validated target packet is then pushed via a secure API to a government conduit, let's say U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. The command staff then reviews that final package, they purchase it, and they execute the action.
So the government isn't paying for the sensor data or the satellite image.
No.
They're paying for the final, verified, and legally compliant intelligence product. It's a service model for validated targeting.
Exactly. And this model introduces market efficiency based on supply and demand dynamics, which, crucially, is what drives resilience.
How so?
In peacetime, supply is high because everyone is in vigilance mode. In wartime, the demand for actionable, verified target packets spikes exponentially. The pace of operations increases, and you need immediate tasking.
And that high demand, combined with the market structure, creates an economic signal. The price of a validated target package would go up dramatically during a conflict.
And that high price acts as a massive incentive for continued vigilance and rapid deployment of new assets.
This is where the marketplace structure directly addresses the igloo-white failure we'll discuss in a bit.
It does. The proposal uses a great example. High prices would encourage a company like Rocket Lab, which has launch sites in New Zealand and the US, to launch rapid response satellites to fill coverage gaps. They do it knowing that a lucrative, guaranteed market exists to pay for that immediate data.
The market provides the economic incentive for surge capacity that governments often struggle to mobilize through slow, bureaucratic defense contracts.
Precisely.
And the ultimate goal of standardizing this commodity is seamless coalition access.
This is the greatest strategic advantage. Imagine this scenario. A validated target package is generated by a Japanese Synspective satellite. It incorporates RF analysis from a French Unseen Labs asset, and it's all fused by a South Korean Hanwha system. That final standardized package can then be purchased by the U.S. Navy and immediately handed off for execution to an Australian destroyer. And there's absolute confidence across the entire coalition that the underlying data, the collateral assessment, and the legal vetting are all standardized and compliant.
But that requires an entirely new level of standardization, specifically around risk. The Allies need a universal, unclassified way to define the risk associated with hitting that target.
Absolutely. This is what necessitated the creation of the Open CDE model collateral damage estimation. Governments normally use their own highly classified CDE models.
Right.
But for a commercial marketplace to function efficiently and interoperate across dozens of allied nations, they needed a non-classified, universally accepted baseline reference.
So what is the universal unit of measurement they settled on?
They standardized on the reference damage unit, or RDU.
Yep.
And the baseline chosen for this metric is the effects of the 155 millimeter high explosive, or HE, artillery round.
Why that specifically?
Because it's one of the most widely used and logistically understood munitions across NATO, Japan, and South Korea. Its effects are a kind of universal language.
What's involved in standardizing the RDU across all these diverse militaries? That sounds like a massive political and technical negotiation.
Oh, it is. The RDU establishes a standardized metric, like a universally accepted 50-meter danger radius for that specific munition. Getting all those countries to agree on that fixed radius, especially given differences in terrain, construction standards, munition variants, it's intensely complex, but it's vital.
And this standard allows for probabilistic risk maps to be generated through massive-scale simulation platforms.
Right, and the sources cite Improbable, a UK company, as performing these simulations.
What do they do?
Improbable specializes in running these vast, detailed synthetic environments. They're used to generate these probabilistic risk maps that predict the potential collateral damage based on that RDU metric, factoring in things like urban density, building material, and terrain.
So it removes subjectivity and ambiguity. It provides an unclassified, data-driven assessment of risk to every buyer.
Exactly. And once that simulation and collateral estimation is done, the target packet is assigned its crucial cleanliness score.
And this is what links the target's usability directly to its price.
And ultimately, its utility to the buyer. It's a standardized 5-point system. A score 1 is platinum, meaning near zero collateral concerns. The target is isolated, the legal risk is negligible, this is the most actionable target, and it commands the highest price.
And a score 5, or bronze, would be the opposite.
Bronze indicates high civilian density around the target, or a high potential for complex legal interpretation under IHL. It gets the lowest price because it has the highest ethical and legal risk. The purchasing government will only execute on that if the military imperative is absolutely overwhelming.
So this transparent scoring system gives governments a clear, standard way to weigh risk versus reward before they commit to a purchase.
It seems like a powerful deterrent built right into the market itself. A company is incentivized to find clean, high-value targets because those command the highest price, rather than just delivering the most numerous targets.
Exactly. It aligns commercial financial incentives with the highest legal and ethical standards for targeting. That's a mechanism you rarely see in previous defense contracting models.
Yes.
To really appreciate how revolutionary this competitive targetry marketplace is, we need to ground it in history. In segment 6, let's compare this modern distributed system to an equivalent centralized failure from the past.
The white paper draws a direct and very powerful parallel to Operation Igloo White during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
This was a very early, very ambitious attempt at creating a technological kill chain using sensors and data analysis. It's really the direct precursor to modern data-driven warfare.
Walk us through Operation Igloo White. What was it?
It was a massive effort aimed at stopping North Vietnamese logistics along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The military deployed thousands of government sensors, mostly acoustic and seismic devices dropped from aircraft, all along the trail.
And the data from those.
That raw data was then beamed back and processed using these centralized IBM mainframes located hundreds of miles away in Thailand. The goal was to process the data and then task air assets to strike in real time.
And why did it ultimately fail to achieve its strategic goals?
It failed because of three critical flaws: cost, centralization, and an inability to adapt. It was hugely expensive to maintain the sensors and that centralized mainframe operation.
And centralization.
Because the system was monolithic and the sensors were all singular in type, just acoustic and seismic, the adversary quickly learned how to spoof the system by hanging the sensors on trees or driving buffalo down the trail to trigger false alarms.
So the centralized system, it lacked the diversity and the flexibility to see through deception. The adversary could just overwhelm the processing with false data.
Precisely. And the modern commercial solution, conversely, is explicitly designed to overcome that fatal flaw of centralization and singularity. The intelligence burden is shared across dozens of diverse commercial vendors.
So if a sophisticated adversary manages to spoof a U.S. optical satellite, the system doesn't collapse.
It becomes resilient. That potential deception is instantly cross-referenced and exposed by a Japanese SAR satellite, which sees right through the physical camouflage hiding the spoof,
Cool.
or a French RF sensor, which detects the necessary radio emissions the adversary has to use to command their spoofing effort. The marketplace's inherent diversity of sensors owned by different sovereign entities is its ultimate protection against large-scale deception.
It effectively requires the adversary to simultaneously counter every single type of commercial sensor technology that's deployed by all these allied nations across every domain instantly.
It's a vastly higher bar for deception than what Operation Igloo White faced.
It provides robust, immediate redundancy. If one vendor is temporarily blinded,
the market is designed to instantly purchase the necessary data from the next available, legally vetted vendor.
Okay, so let's address the final critical component, the technical backbone that makes all of this secure and functional. Given that this is largely unclassified commercial data, where do all these terabytes of pre-vetted data actually live?
The storage has to be distributed globally, mirroring the geographic location of the allied vendors. The data resides primarily in commercial server farms. Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud Platform are cited as providing that scalable backbone infrastructure for this massive unclassified data lake.
It keeps costs down and allows for rapid commercial innovation on the analytics side.
It does.
But if the data is living in commercial clouds, how does the military ensure absolute security when they decide to purchase a target package and move to execution? They can't allow the commercial cloud to touch their classified command and control networks.
This relies on a very strict technical separation. It's known as a secure government gateway, often implemented as a physical diode.
A diode.
This gateway acts as an absolute firewall between the unclassified commercial cloud, where all the massive data processing and the constitutional AI analysis happens, and the classified firing network, where the actual final decision and execution commands are generated.
So the validated target package flows one way.
One way. It maintains the air-gap integrity of the classified networks.
So the processing power is outsourced, but the decision and the execution authority remain strictly within the classified sovereign military domain, separated by a digital physical barrier.
That is the essential security model. And finally, this entire structure has to align with existing allied data sharing agreements.
It has to leverage the trust that's been built over decades.
It does. The marketplace aligns directly with existing frameworks, and they cite the very significant US-Japan ROK Trilateral Data Sharing Agreement.
From 2023.
Yes, which was established specifically for the real-time exchange of critical missile warning data. The marketplace essentially expands that pre-existing secure data pipe to include this new standardized product, validated, actionable targetry packages. It's leveraging an established protocol for a next-generation intelligence product.
So if we connect this all back to the bigger picture,
the core value proposition of this commercial targetry marketplace is clear. You're outsourcing the expensive, slow, and resource-intensive process of target development to a competitive, globally distributed private sector. This solves the critical problems of scale, speed, and resilience all at the same time.
And it provides a strategic leapfrog capability. Governments can immediately leverage the best of Silicon Valley, Tokyo, Seoul, Canberra, and Helsinki without having to rebuild their own core classified networks, which are often the slowest part of the entire process.
It's fundamentally an acquisition strategy for intelligence superiority.
And the sources show this model relies on two fundamental pillars that really distinguish it from previous military commercial partnerships.
Right. First, you have the globally distributed diverse sensor network. That ensures redundancy and protection against systemic deception, effectively overcoming the fatal flaw of Operation Igloo White.
And second, the integration of ethical safeguards. Specifically, that constitutional AI acting as the automated legal gatekeeper.
And you combine that with the standardization built around the reference damage unit and the cleanliness score. That combination is what ensures trust, compliance with IHL, and seamless interoperability across the entire Allied coalition,
So this system is designed for continuous peacetime vigilance.
where the entire Allied private sector is constantly tracking, analyzing, and pre-vetting potential adversaries globally, all while adhering to these strict legal and ethical constraints.
Which raises an important and maybe unsettling question, and this is the thought we want to leave with you. If the private sector is constantly monitoring, analyzing, and building these fully verified target packages that are ready to go, and the only transaction required to transition from intelligence gathering to kinetic conflict is a single, instantaneous API call. What does this new reality mean for the traditional slow-moving definition of peacetime intelligence gathering? And where is the line truly drawn between commercial industry and the act of national security?